My name is Jordan Farmer. This is another episode of Uncommon Conversations, and I have a very interesting guest with you today. His name is Niko House, and he's a journalist and a contributor at, I believe, RT, Reuters. We're going to have a wonderful conversation with you guys today. I'm just going to take a moment to invite him. We'll get into it very soon. Gonna have an interesting one for you guys today. He's a very informed and very informative content creator, and I have a major sense that he. Hey,
What's
here,
up, man?
my man. Good to see you.
I'm here.
Yep.
Good to see you too, man. Thanks for inviting me on.
I appreciate you coming on, man. And as I was saying, I think you're going to have a lot of interesting insights and opinions, and so I'm very excited to get into this conversation. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to turn off those comments. So, real quick, I'll just introduce myself to you, sir. I'm mostly just a regular guy. I don't have a whole lot of credentials or achievements to really speak of. I just am a guy who wants people to find understanding in politics. I want people to learn to come together and have the same realization that I had at a very early stage in my political journey. And that was that most people agree on most things. Most people just want the basics: a good economy, low crime, cheap cost of living, to be essentially free from tyranny and violence. And the rest of the details are really just, what the whole discussion of politics is about and what I'm trying to facilitate with these conversations. And so, and my name's Jordan Farmer. That's worth noting as well.
Congratulations on that ring. You and Kobe really held it down in that finals versus Boston.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
You ever heard of Jordan Farmer?
Oh, right. Sorry. I just had a guy whose tagline is "Brother Boston" on my last podcast.
That's funny.
And I am familiar with Jordan Farmer, so there's just a few different things that popped into my head, and I just got a call. So my brain just went into 3 different directions at once.
It's just I was literally just arguing with somebody out, and every time I'm arguing with somebody about Kobe, because obviously the Kobe LeBron debate for whatever reason just gets skipped over. I'm like, bro, he took Jordan Farmer to a championship. I don't want to hear any more debates. So, and Sasha
I like that. Yep.
And Andrew Bynum with no knees. So yeah.
So, if you would please, sir, introduce yourself to us and to my audience.
So my name is Niko House. For those of you who don't know, I am a political analyst and a journalist and an activist. Mostly I do the journalism side now. I had to take a break because honestly, I just got burnt out and family stuff got crazy. But I started getting active. Well, I've been active, but I would say the year that kind of defined my career was probably 2015, during the whole Bernie versus Hillary, I guess you can call it debacle at this point. But while I was at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, I accidentally stumbled into a role that I'd never expected to be taken this far, to be quite honest with you. I actually got it. So, believe it or not, being an independent-minded person, especially to be frank when you're Black, even debate causes issues. So I was an APTA, American Parliamentary Debate Association, while I was at the University of North Carolina. And it is a very, very elitist league. It used to actually be dominantly neocon, but then it became dominantly neoliberal. But this is the same debate league that Ted Cruz came up in, which is why he speaks and orates the way that he does and how he can say so much without saying literally anything at all. So I got basically screwed out of a committee position. I was supposed to actually start a whole committee in the debate organization. It was a diversity committee, and it got killed off basically. And one of the guys was so upset about it. When he graduated, he ended up working for Bernie Sanders, and he was like, look, man, don't worry about that. I feel like this would be better for you. This guy, Bernie Sanders, he's running, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, I look him up. And I'm like, damn, bro, this dude got like a 2% chance of winning with a 4% margin of error. So like, nobody knew nobody knew who he was, which is crazy to think about it in hindsight. But nobody knew who he was yet. Then I saw his policies on weed, and I was like, okay, I might get him guy a second look. And then I saw his policies on education. Even though I got free school because I'm a veteran, like that was something that I saw a lot of people struggling with, and I also know that that was directly impacting the real estate industry. And if the real estate, the real estate in our economy is in flux, so is our economy. It usually means there's high income inequality, and it's hard for the middle class to be strong without a strong real estate economy. So I'm like, okay, I'm checking this guy out. I'm seeing his universal health care plan. I'm like, yo, this dude actually has some really legit solid policies. So, and I just was not going to vote for Hillary. I didn't know at the time before I saw Bernie who I was going to vote for, but I just was not going to vote for Hillary. I'm sorry. Even and this is at a point where I still liked Obama. This is 2015, early 2015. So I still liked Obama at this point for the most part. And I'm like, I still remember all the racist shit that Hillary said to Obama. I didn't forget that shit to this day. Obama did apparently, but that's a whole different conversation. So anyway, fast forward. I take him up on an offer. I start the organization. We end up being the largest Bernie Sanders organization in the country. We had over 300 people active. We were all the events for the most part around the Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill area. So effectively what we call the Triangle, Research Triangle Park is where University of North Carolina, Duke, and NC State are. And Wake Forest is over here somewhere too, I guess. But that's actually where Monsanto is too, believe it or not.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is actually, I didn't know at the time until later on, this is like Hillary Clinton's stomping ground. Like people didn't know that, but because you got North Carolina, that Chapel Hill specifically is like 5 hours away from DC, and then you have Virginia, which is obviously her other stomping ground, and she's kept basically political strongholds in both of those states for longer than I've even been in politics. So I end up starting this organization. I'm like so involved in all, not just the student level politics, but like just the community kind of band around our organization because of just how massive we were and how we were just kind of like taking things into our own hands, that the campaign actually just made me state director. While because honestly they didn't want to pay somebody, and then it was like, well, this kid seems like he knows what he's doing, so let's just let him do it. Let's not mess up a good thing and try to fix what's not broken. So we kill it. There are ups, there are downs. There's all this kind of crazy shit going on. I'm being invited to run for office and all kinds of crazy shit. And as an aside, the funny part about me being asked to run for office a lot of the time that had nothing to do with policies. People would say, "Hey man, you're really charismatic," and I'm like, "Okay." They're like, "You should run for office." I'm like, "Oh, okay." They're like, I'm like, "Wow, well, you're charismatic, you're young, decent looking guy, you speak well." I'm like, "Okay, I'm not sure what that means. I should run for office." Those seem like reasons I should be maybe a star of a television show, not necessarily run for office. Yeah. And so that kind of gave me a glimpse into how these people operate. But because of how involved I was in the community and with the campaign, both the official campaign and the grassroots level, I effectively found out that there was let's just call it some weird stuff. There was some weird stuff happening. Shenanigans. I was trying to be as judicious as possible at the time because I'm like, I ain't no way. At this time I didn't trust my instinct as much. I won't say that I was 100% bought into it as I am now, but I'm like, something's going on. I'm gonna say it could just be something as simple as incompetence. That's what I was like. So I should just look more into it. And then some other stuff started happening where our organization was being disinvited from events. But Hillary Clinton's organizations and young Democrats were being invited, but we weren't being invited. Or we were invited, then we were disinvited or uninvited. And little things like that started piling up. So I was actually really close friends with somebody on the official campaign. Her name was All Teresa. And nobody knew we knew each other though. And nobody knew we talked. But we both had the same feeling, and we were like, yo, don't tell anybody that we know each other. Just keep your ear to the ground, and we'll kind of keep reporting back to each other. So this is my senior year. It's March. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's spring break time. I was not holding up my spring break to not a goddamn soul because I was going to Miami. So, so I find out. So somebody calls me. I'm like, yo, what's up? They're like, hey, are you gonna be in town? I'm like, why? Oh, well, Aisha wants to know, and this is the person who took over state director after like officially for the campaign. They were paid, and I'm like, why does she want to know? And she was like, oh, because Bernie's coming in town. I'm like, why am I finding out about this the day before? I bullshit you not. The day before, I'm like, what do you mean Bernie's coming into town? They're like, yeah, he's coming this weekend. I said, first of all, before we even get into why I'm just not finding this out, who planned for Bernie to come into town the weekend that all the UNC school systems go to spring break? Who the fuck planned that? Like, I'm like, and why wasn't I involved in the planning? And like, I'm just like, because now you gotta mind you, at this point, there's a bunch of shit that's been happening where these coincidences keep popping up, where I keep getting left out of information or strategy or whatever. When before I was running the meetings, and then we get uninvited to these events, and they were like, well, they want you to speak, but like if you're not gonna be here, I'm like, well, no, I'm not gonna be here. I already booked the hotel, and I got all this, like, I got people that I'm going down to Miami with. I can't just change my entire schedule. Also, why did I know about this? And I'm like, they kept giving me excuses on excuses. Oh, it's super last minute. Oh, is it? Oh, I'm like, all right, whatever. So then before I got off the phone, I said she stopped me and said, hey, are you still talking to Teresa? I'm like, I mean, not really often. Why? Like, okay, well, we can't talk to her anymore. I'm like, why is that? They said, because she's fired. I said, fired from who? They're like, fired from the campaign. It's illegal to talk to her. I'm like, really? Are you sure? Who told you this? And she was like, Aisha. I said, oh, word. Okay, bet. I call Al Teresa right then and there. I was like, yo, Al Teresa. She's like, what's up, Niko? I was like, yo, did you know you were fired from the campaign? She's like, I'll be damned. I'm out here doing campaign work right now. Like literally, she was, I think, in New Hampshire at the time doing work. And I was like, yeah, well, according to Aisha, you're fired. So that was the moment when we figured it out. Like we knew, we kind of had a feeling it was her, like it was Aisha do, like was one of the main moles. Turned out she had been pushing and pulling for Hillary the entire time before she became the state director for Bernie. She was working with Debbie Wasserman Schultz beyond just being corrupt and two-faced. She was actually just a horrible consultant from the beginning. She's tanked multiple campaigns that were actually doing well until she got their hands on them. Like she was known around North Carolina for being incompetent in politics, right? She ends up being the state director. And I'm finding out, so I'm like, yo, this is okay, fuck this. Like, so literally on the way to Miami, I do a Facebook like live or a video or something like that, just asking all these questions. I'll be honest with you, it's mostly because I didn't have the time nor the energy to reach out to everybody individually. So I'm like, yo, y'all just DM me or whatever. I get blown up, bro. I get messages from all over the country, bro. like I bullshit you not. Hundreds of messages from staffers, from volunteers, from politicians, from consultants, like former staffers, people who had quit. A lot of like, bro, I wish I could have just. I wish you could have seen my face when I looked at my DMs. I'm like, this was not how I was supposed to be spending my spring break. This was not supposed to happen. I just was expecting like 15 or 20 people from North Carolina to reach out. And so now I'm on the beach. I'm on South Beach. I'm drinking a mojito. And I like have a decision to make. I'm like, yo, if I answer these emails or these emails and DMs and all I say, yo, I know when I answer this stuff, like my life is probably never going to be the same ever again. Because I know myself and I wasn't just going to let it die. So I took a big ass gulp of my mojito and got to work. And so ultimately what that led to was a DNC fraud lawsuit where, Bruce Spiva, who was representing the DNC, admitted in court that the Democratic Party, at least, believes that they can select whoever they like to run for president, and we have no say.
Yep.
He argued that in court. Now, the part that oftentimes gets kind of like downplayed is what the judge said in his decision. Even though he dismissed it, it wasn't on the grounds that they could cheat. He actually said in his final decision that the court will not recognize the trivialization of their charter, like, which would be like with him when he was saying that they can just do whatever the hell they want to, regardless of what their charter says. So like that was a positive thing, but obviously we didn't get the results we want. We got all the way up to the Supreme Court. Clarence Thomas, unfortunately, ended up being the one judge who saw the case because he didn't get it until, I bullshit you not, like basically once Joe Biden got the nomination, that's when we found out Clarence Thomas was going to be reviewing whether or not it'll be heard in front of the Supreme Court, which is like the worst possible Republican to have in that situation. So, but yeah, so I worked with Jared Elizabeth Lee Beck, who reside here in Miami, and we started the DNC fraud lawsuit, which was usually it would get dismissed sooner actually, because almost every political lawsuit at that point had been dismissed because they said you can't sue. Everybody was trying to sue political parties, and they would always try to do it in response to a result of the election, which is very difficult to do, rather than prior to the election concluding. So I ended up figuring out that the DNC was operating as basically a nonprofit organization and like a 501c4, and they were a corporation. And the number one reason, actually, that nonprofits get sued and they usually lose is because they don't maintain their charter. They don't uphold their charter, and they take money under false pretense and do not do what they claim to that they said they were going to do with the money when they received it. So that's actually the number one way that they are sued. So that took a lot of research, and all that good stuff with Jared, and we figured that part out. So together, he and I crafted all the arguments for the lawsuit. And even though we didn't get the result we would like, I feel like that lawsuit told the world everything that they needed to know. And it confirmed what a lot of people had been suspicious of. And so because of that, and not like me having to get breakdowns of the lawsuit and all that good stuff, I ended up getting a radio show on iHeartRadio. And then that turned to a YouTube channel. In the midst of all the research for that good stuff, I figured out. Also, I was the one who broke the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund story.
Victory Fund?
The Hillary Clinton Victory Fund story. Yeah. TYT claimed credit for it because back in the day, Jordan Sheridan, I was the one giving, I didn't know who else to talk to. And so I was actually giving him the information that I was figuring out about the DNC and all the ways they were trying to cheat, whether it be through fundraising or rigging or putting moles in certain campaign or positions and stuff like that. So I gave him all the information. And it was there was no way that anyone would have figured out the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund without being given specific information, because it was like a specific number of states, and you had to know where to look to find it. And the only reason I knew where to look was because it was the former North Carolina Democratic Party treasurer who was feeding me the information. So TYT took credit for it. And they claim, so Political put it out first. TYT was the first to report on it. And Jordan had claimed that there was no smoking gun right before they took the story and ran with it. Right? So this is what I started dealing with actually from that point forward, where people began to realize, to put it bluntly, I was in this particular space that we call independent media. At that time, especially in 2016, there was literally no one else more qualified to do the job, whether it be political analyst, commentator, activist, whatever. I had done the activism side. I had done the organizing side. I was consulting with Bernie Sanders. I was a head advisor for the gubernatorial campaign of Kenneth Spalding in North Carolina. I had spoken at events. I was already a public speaker. I had even the educational background. My major is comparative politics with a double major, comparative politics in Brazilian Portuguese, and I minored in Korean. So international politics was my thing, and analysis was my thing. And because I had did debate for so long since I was in high school, it was actually, that part was speaking to a camera was actually the easiest thing that I had to do. But because of that, I had become, and once again, because I was Black on top of all this, and a lot of the times I would end up disagreeing with a lot of what neoliberals had to say, I became a target really quickly. But nonetheless, I still was one of the few calling out Russiagate and connecting all the dots and trying to help people see like what was really happening. I was talking about what was going on in Eastern Europe while Obama was still president. I was like, yo, he's shipping a lot of weapons out there. And like, I was talking about the neo-Nazis in Ukraine in 2016 still. Like, people hadn't even begun to think about that type of stuff back then, but I was already reporting on it. Then fast forward, Bernie and Tulsi both run. I had felt like at first I wasn't going to endorse either of them. I just felt like we just needed to support any type of candidate that was coming, at least, prospectively from the outside, just so we can not allow Kamala or Joe Biden to win, which did not work out quite how we expected, but partially it worked out. But because I had endorsed Tulsi over Bernie, because Tulsi was the one who introduced the Securing America's Elections Act, the SAFE Act. She had introduced the All Fossil Fuels Act with a realistic transition period and realistic alternative fuels. Not this bullshit like Green New Deal, Fourth Industrial Revolution bullshit, because she had already seen that coming from a mile away, which is why she directly addressed most of that type of stuff in her bill, which is why the squad never got behind it, because it wasn't the Fourth Industrial Revolution. It wasn't going to lead to corporations profiting. And like, she was the one who was going to reinforce the Fairness in Media Act, like all the stuff that she was talking about and that Bernie was sometimes talking about, like, she had bills for that shit. And for me, I'm about action. Like politicians can talk all day, right? They will. They'll talk a goddamn air. Bernie had been a damn senator for far too long. He was a senator the entire time after the 2016 election was over. But that entire time, he had introduced no bill to support any of the stuff that he was supposedly running on. Whereas Tulsi, before she even announced she was running for president, even before I think she even knew she was going to run for president, like, she had already been introducing bills. She tried to introduce a bill in 2014 to completely demilitarize the police. And people had no idea. Like, she was the one saying, like, yo, there's some refugees that seem to be subversion, like they're subverting the process, and we need to figure out why they're being allowed to do so. And now we know that actually when it comes to like Syria, Afghanistan, and places like that, a lot of the refugees that are allowed to come in, it's because they were doing the dirty work for us overseas. So like, she was already privy to that type of stuff. And so with my understanding of foreign policy, I knew how important it was to have a commander in chief that can't be really questioned on her foreign policy knowledge and her convictions in that department. And for the most part, she had upheld that. And because she was so consistent in calling out the Democratic Party to the point where even Hillary got nervous and made a misstep and, with the whole calling her a Russian asset thing, like, because she was so much better, she was the one who was most attacked by Bernie people, which is insane. Like, literally, I could not believe the shit out. I was confused. I was perplexed. I was befuddled. I don't know. I was all the damn synonyms for confused as shit. Because not only was she being attacked, but she was a victim of the most sexist attacks, racist attacks from Bernie people. Specifically. Like, not the liberals. The liberals were just calling her a Russian asset. Like, okay, whatever. Like, we've been getting called Russian assets since 2016. That's kind of like, oh. But when you see people, like, and then Bernie threw her under the bus. And, like, so all this shit's happening. And, like, me, beyond politics, me and Tulsi are friends, like, actual friends. But, like, so I'm, like, loyal to my friends. But I'm also loyal to people who have shown a propensity to get it right most of the time. And even if they get it wrong, I'm not questioning whether or not they're getting it wrong because it's, it's efficient. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's expeditious politically. Like, maybe she's got it wrong because she's got it wrong. That happens. Shit, nobody's perfect. Like, but because of all that, Bernie people started jumping on Tulsi. And then because I was her lead fundraiser, I was the one who was always in the front. And I was one of her surrogates. I became, like, attacked by both Bernie people and the establishment media. I really didn't care all that much about it, except for the fact that we were literally about to miss out on an opportunity to have a presidential candidate who probably, if she would have got to the general election, won all 50 states. Like, Trump's people loved her. Trump himself loved her. Trump never attacked her the entire election. So all this stuff I'm seeing in my purview, and I'm like, yo, this is the candidate. Like, this is the one who needs to win. Even if, or at the bare minimum, she needs to make it far so that people can hear this message. And so that's actually when my channel started blowing up. I was one of the very few leftists that were backing Tulsi and being honest about her policies and educating people on her policies. We actually got her first interview, like, with Indie Media, which is pretty dope. And I end up, like, basically, I was one of her, like, advisors, and we were the ones who did the opposition research that led to her destroying Kamala. So yeah, probably one of
That
my,
was good.
like,
That was beautiful to watch, man. That was well executed. And as someone, this might surprise you, as someone who's criticized Tulsi Gabbard's signaling and messaging and the way she tended to approach her or some of her ways she messaged things, that was just beautiful. That was well executed, tight, soundbite. Boom.
Oh, that was
Blew it
pissed
up.
off Tulsi, man. There's not a person on this planet that can scorch earth better than pissed off Tulsi, man. She is like a whole nother focus level. What was funny is that if you were in the crowd, you would actually, like, her fist was balling up. So what the story behind that shit was, I'm not even sure if Tulsi was going to roast her like that, bro. That's the crazy part, because she usually tries to keep things peaceful. Even if you look at the very first debate, she wasn't going to go at old boy until he came at her on some sideways shit. And so that whole situation happened because when we were here in Homestead at the detention center for the migrant children, Tulsi, we went. I was with her. We live streamed the whole thing, right? And in the response to that specific question about immigration and all that good stuff, Kamala basically gave a rendition of exactly what happened in Tulsi's live stream, and then they just asked Tulsi. So now Tulsi they're just gonna think she's copying Kamala. So she's pissed, right? Yeah. And she's already had this little thing brewing in the background with Kamala for a hot minute now, especially because like Tulsi was getting the kind of attacks that you would expect Kamala to get, but she wasn't getting it, like the sexist attacks, the racist attacks, but she was being insulated by the Democratic Party, whereas Tulsi was being thrown under the bus. So she just, like, unleashes on her, bro. I remember I was live streaming that shit at the time. I almost fell out of my damn chair. I was like, yeah! And literally the next day, bro, it was 2 days later, Kamala's black support went from like 92 or 93% to 2%. And this is like a BET poll, people. This is a BET poll. So yeah, that was one of like my favorite moments in politics. Like, I was like, okay, yeah, this shit. It was definitely.
It spoke to the need for brash, hardcore, in-your-face leadership and offense that we need in the modern situation. Way too many people that are in politics think that people want you to pretend that the system still works for us.
Yeah,
like they still want people to play the game a little bit. The Trump phenomenon is almost exclusively a byproduct of people being fed up with the system.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so when you have moments like that with
Tulsi, be deceived, right? People did want to be deceived at one point. Like I can really admit that, because all the information Mike Gravel didn't just run in 2016 or 2020, like 2019. God rest his soul. But like he was saying the same shit in Obama's first election, 2007, 2008. And people weren't listening. Ron Paul saying some of the same things in the same elections, but life was okay. People, for the most part, the middle class was doing okay. And ignorance is bliss until it's not.
Yeah. I think the Obama administration was a turning point, including for me, because he overpromised and underdelivered. And that meant that a bunch of people were sitting there like, this was supposed to be the moment where we take a step forward as a country. And the system just ate him up. I mean, he was already a part of the system. He was already sold out long before he ever showed up there. But he he was supposed to be something different, and he ended
Yeah.
up not being that. And people, I think, after that were just fed up because, like, Obama's talent at speaking to the moment, speaking to people's souls and
Oh, he's a
emotions, and
hypnotist, bro. He's a
he
hypnotist.
really is. He
Like
really
that.
is.
Bro, to this very day, I'll be listening to some, like, I don't know, some skit with Obama, and I'm like laughing. I'm like, shit, I fucking hate you. Why am I laughing at this, dog? You're such a likable guy. I hate it.
Why are you so charming?
Yeah, bro. It's like dude was a demon. I promise you, like the Antichrist. But like the thing about Obama was that I remember when Mike Gravel actually said during that 2007, 2008 debate, during the primaries, he said, "You scare me the most." He looked at Obama, he said, "You scare me the most." And he was like, "Why is that?" He said, "Because you actually think you can do this by yourself, and you can't." He's like, "You believe it, too. You really believe that you can do it by yourself. You cannot." Like, and this is, I didn't see this until 2019, 2020. I was like, yo, this man, Mike Gravel, has been telling us this stuff. And and none of that stuff ever, because this was before the social media era. So that type of stuff never went viral. Today, that shit would have went viral instantaneously. But even if what Tulsi did to Kamala, there would have been little to no effect in 2008, 2001, if that would have happened. They would have glossed over it. They would have pretended it never happened. But because
Even 2012.
even in 2012, yeah. But because of social media and then the Google situation, because people forget every debate that Tulsi was a part of, she was the #1 most Google candidate. Like every single time. Rightfully so. And that was putting some pressure on them to try to kind of take control of the narrative, because narrative is power, like especially in today's world. And so they would end up, oh, she's a Russian asset. Oh, she's an assault apologist, like whatever the hell that means. Like, and so those are all also missteps. So everything they did just ended up leading to her going viral and her meeting her, fundraising criteria and all that good stuff. And although that was great, it sucked because I feel like it deflated a lot of people, because what we witnessed was somebody who was constantly conquering every obstacle that the DNC was putting in front of her. And at the same time, simultaneously, for those who were still supporting Bernie, this man had broken every single record you could possibly think of. Individual fundraising records, amounts being funded. Like this, people were getting millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars thrown at their campaign. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, even Bloomberg. No, Bloomberg actually was self-funding. But like Elizabeth Warren, another example. And he was out raising them through individual donations. And they're watching they're watching TV and being told, actually, he's not that popular. He's raising all this money and breaking all these records and filling all of these stadiums because he's actually not that popular. And we were being gaslighted the entire election. And it was so deflating. And then the general election comes around, right? General election comes around, we get rid of Kamala. Everybody, I don't know, maybe your audience doesn't know, but like basically Kamala was selected in 2017 by Hillary Clinton's donors. Her sister Maya Harris was actually the third chief advisor to Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2016. So a lot of people don't know that. Her whole trajectory was the reason she got bumped up from DA to AG, and then immediately after AG became a senator, and then obviously started running, was because she was chosen to do so. She was being groomed effectively, but she gets eliminated, wildly unpopular now. And somehow Joe Biden's like, yeah, man. So we're trying to beat the most popular president really in modern history, next to Obama. And at this point, Trump was actually probably more popular than Obama was, even though the polls were trying to convince people otherwise. Like, he's like, I know what we'll do to win. We'll pick the most unpopular candidate to run during the primary. And so we're like, wow. So we got, after all this effort that we did to make sure Kamala was nowhere near the Oval Office, she still somehow gets picked. And it gets rationalized. Once again, almost like they knew that they were going to be able to determine the outcome regardless of what we wanted. Then this whole situation with Trump happens, where he somehow increases his voter block again amongst all demographics, surprisingly, except for white men. And he set the record for incumbents, or the popular vote for an incumbent. And I was watching as he was actually dominating the entire night, and then random 2, 3 in the morning Eastern time, things started flipping after the votes were being held up, the clocks were freezing, and then states would flip instantly into Biden. And then you started seeing, and now, mind you, at this point, I would consider myself somewhat of an election integrity expert at this point. And we're looking into these court cases, and they're not saying that there's no evidence that Trump wasn't cheated or that there wasn't rigging from either side. What they were denying was the audit process to figure out if everything was on the up and up. That is not the same thing. And then you have to question once again the integrity of that particular process, because if you are a federal judge or a U.S. attorney, who is your boss? Who hires and fires you? The president. It's an executive. It literally, federal judges are appointed. They're not elected like DAs. So now I have to potentially piss off my next boss to grant Trump an audit. Yeah, that's not happening. It's not happening. Like, it doesn't fucking happen. Literally, Bill Clinton, during the 90s, the reason he was able to get away with everything he did with the ATF and the DEA and the drug wars, and I mean, hell, you can even, if you want to go look into Columbine and, Oklahoma City bomb, all that. Bill Clinton fired every single federal judge and U.S. attorney that wouldn't be loyal to him and put in people that were loyal to him. That's how he was able to get away with all of it. And part of the reason a lot of stuff started coming out was because people who understand actually how the system truly works were finally able to come out because Trump was in power and had upset the balance. So everything became chaos, and that's how Jeff Epstein got exposed. That's how Ghislaine Maxwell gets exposed. That's like a lot of people began to get exposed merely by the presence of Trump. Because the system was out of whack at this point. So
that speaks to the drain the swamp comment, which a lot of people, in my opinion, interpret incorrectly. They assume drain the swamp means you get rid of all the swamp creatures, but drain the swamp, the metaphor means you drain the water out of the swamp. Now you see all the swamp creatures. And if you test that comment on that, on those grounds, that
would be the literal. Like, that should actually be the literal interpretation, because it's literally draining the swamp.
Yeah.
Which goes into the whole, and it would be, and I almost guarantee that was Steve Bannon's phrase. I'm pretty sure. I mean, the dude is a strategic genius. Like, it doesn't matter if you like him or not. Like, I'm just saying, objectively speaking.
But hey, he's a racist, fascist supporting.
I mean, he probably is racist. Like, I mean, you understand, guys, I'm a black guy. There's not been a president in my lifetime that hasn't done some racist shit. So, like, it'd be really hard for me to just completely ignore someone's objectively good. Like, 'cause I'm a strategist too, right? Like, this is what I do. So I have to understand how these people move. And like, I watched almost all Steve Bannon's interviews during during the election in 2016, and even after, when he was basically forced out of the White House. Because then I was curious as to why he was forced out. And I knew it wasn't Trump. And you listen to him giving compliments to Bernie, he's like, yeah, I mean, I like him, but like, I mean, he's popular, he's objective, and he has the appearance of being honest, and that's strategically is not good for either party. And he basically took Bernie's message at the time and rebranded it so that Trump could use it. And then Bernie supporters, almost immediately after Bernie gave it up to Hillary, switched to Trump. Like,
I was one of those people. Now, I voted third party in California because it didn't matter anyways, and so I wanted to give the third party an extra vote, libertarian. But I would have chosen and voted for Trump over Hillary Clinton, because my conception was twofold. One, Hillary Clinton is a guaranteed crap sandwich, like just corrupt to the end, and Trump was a gamble. Yeah, we don't really know what we're going to get, but Trump was a gamble. Now, a lot of people that have felt the burn, Bernie Sanders felt the burn since 2016, are just fanboys, in my opinion, because they did not understand his initial vision. They did not understand how he changed. And more importantly than anything, I saw in the 2016 primaries debate after debate after debate where he explained how corrupt Hillary Clinton was and how she was taking fees and speech fees from big banks and all kinds of stuff. And then at the end of that whole run, he turns around and says, all right, now vote for her.
After
the second that happened, I couldn't believe it anymore. I couldn't believe that he genuinely, because he was right about all those things, but then he just didn't have that final, just to be neutral, just to say, I'm going to be quiet.
Like, for me, what was crazy about the whole situation was because I'm the same way. I'm like, bro, okay, so we just spent a considerable amount of time, energy, and effort convincing people how fucked up Hillary Clinton is, and now you're like, but we gotta vote for Hillary. I'm like, why? Oh, because Trump is racist. No, sir, come here. Let me talk to you real quick. We just spent a considerable amount of time, energy, and effort reminding the world how racist Hillary Clinton is. Like, not in theory, in actuality. And now you're like, let's pretend like that shit isn't happening because Trump is mean. Like, and you can tell there's a lot of psychological undertones that are oftentimes unaddressed in these conversations that we really have to think about. Like, people forget in the context of Bernie becoming an activist, both of his parents died. His brother moved overseas. He was in Chicago by himself as a Brooklyn Jewish kid who had no friends and no ties in the city. What is the fastest way to build up a community? I'm not going to be able to be hanging out with the racists because I'm still Jewish and I'm from New York. Bet I'm going to be an activist. And that's how he was able to build up his community, his success, his friendships, his allegiances and alliances. And when people built up their career strictly from being in front of a camera, especially back then, it was damn hard to do so. But when you built up a career from being, quote unquote, righteously angry and, you know, all that good stuff, and through activism, bro, it becomes like a drug. The fame becomes a drug for these people. We saw it with John Lewis. We see it with Bernie Sanders, even still. And I mean, he already said that he didn't want to be like Ross Perot. Like, is that what he said, right? He didn't want to be like Ross Perot. So we got to keep it in context. Bernie had a need to feel validated. The Democratic Party, first, it was the people who got behind him who validated him in 2015 and 2016. Then the Democratic Party started giving him positions, started kind of bending the knee a little bit, started taking him seriously. And then ultimately, what happened? He gets that position on the Budget Committee, which is one of the highest positions in the Senate. So he got his validation, which meant our validation wasn't important anymore. Then you have a lot of leftists who grew up. A lot of leftists end up being marginalized. Like, they're marginalized very young, maybe because of their race, maybe because of their ethnicity, maybe because of their religion, maybe because they have a disability. It could be a plethora of things. They end up becoming isolated and individualized. The Bernie movement gave people a home that previously didn't have one in society. So they became more obsessed with what the movement gave them, which are friends and cliques, like friendship cliques, not like click cliques, but also that, like, more so than the movement. Now, people like myself, people like Kim Iverson, Fiorella, a few others, like, I never had a problem really making friends growing up. Like, I was a pretty popular guy in high school. I was an athlete and a debater. Like, didn't really have a problem, like, getting along with people. Most honest people in media, in independent media, also have the same background. Like, I don't need, my friends aren't from politics. Like, I have friends in politics, but I don't need politics. I don't need a movement for me to have friends. And so my vision is a little bit clearer than a lot of other people's. And so when you have that independence where, like, my political ideology doesn't determine my friendships, and the people, the candidates or the politicians or whoever I'm involved with also don't determine my friendships, I think it's keeping it a band. But a lot of these leftists could not do it. They can't do it. They can't go at Bernie for the same reason a racist from Alabama would have trouble not being racist. Like, so you're gonna tell me, like, that my uncle was wrong, that my mom and my dad were wrong, that all of my teachers were wrong, that all the friends that I grew up with were wrong? So what the fuck am I supposed to do? Who am I supposed to fucking hang out with? That's everybody in my life. It's just easier for me to pretend to be racist than it is for me to not be racist, even if you know better. Because that is a paradigm shift in one's reality. Everything that you know to be true would be challenged, and then you would have to do the hard work of figuring out who you are within that context. And a lot of people can't handle that. They don't do enough shrooms. So
facts. Absolute fact. And I got nothing to push back against that one. It's really cool that you mentioned Mike Figueredo and Kim Iverson. I'm a big fan of both of them. Um,
Oh, me and Mike don't get along anymore. I'm a big
nowadays,
fan
maybe
of
more so
Kim.
Kim Iverson, but
Big fan of Kim. Me and Mike do not get along anymore because he was one of those guys where we had a
he's become a
conversation.
little cold and cutthroat.
Yeah, yeah, and that was mostly because like during the whole Tulsi thing, he was one of the ones who were literally lying about her policies, and he had my number, right? Everybody, and I had the green light by Tulsi to go on anybody's show to talk about any of her policies, right? Like everybody knew this. I was like, whenever people would have these online debates between either candidates or their or representative for the candidates, I was the one who was always authorized to represent Tulsi. Whenever people have questions about her Medicare, excuse me, oh my goodness, hold up. It was a universal health care plan. I can't remember what we called it, but basically it was the best plan. And I know it was the best plan because I was helping with it. Like, and I had worked in the medical insurance industry before. So like the detail of that healthcare plan was, I mean, it was like chef's kiss. It was wonderful. And anyone could have called me on that show to talk about it. But instead they speculated, saying like, nah, this is what the plan actually is. And no, she's talking about Medicare choice or whatever the fuck. And then I was trying not to do it at the time because I wanted to give Bernie a chance to explain himself before I blew it up. But because everybody kept attacking Tulsi, making the claim that she was for Medicare choice and she was actually the one doing the bidding of the insurance companies, I said, oh, so y'all haven't actually looked at Bernie's healthcare plan yet, have you? Because if you look, it actually says that doctors and practices have the option of opting out of Medicare and having them in their network. So what happens whenever, like, we already have a strained medical system as it is. So what happens when all of them start opting out, which means they don't have to pay into the plan anymore?
Then the system doesn't.
Exactly.
I mean, it basically just destroys the system from within. It doesn't get out before it's got going.
So if anything, it would be like another Obamacare situation where people thought that like, oh, it would be better to have everybody paying into a thing and then like a pool. And then no, what it ultimately ended up doing was gave all the power to the insurance companies and corroded the system internally slowly. And that would have been what would ultimately happen with Bernie's healthcare system, which is part of the reason why Tulsi felt the need to introduce her own. Because she never introduces anything just to copycat somebody. If she introduces something new, it's because she sees a fatal flaw in a plan, and we address the flaw. So Mike was one of the ones that could have brought me on. Kim obviously did have me on. A lot of the who was it? Somebody else. I can't remember me and Jordan were okay at the time. I think we were kind of copacetic. Like a lot of these people, they all knew. They could invite me on to talk about it. Crystal Ball and Sagar. In fact, Sagar did try to bring me on to talk about it. He got shut down by his producers. Like, because not only was Tulsi proven to be the best candidate, but she was also, to be honest, proven to have the best surrogates who were mostly right about most of the shit. Like, Kim Iverson was a surrogate at one point. Obviously, I was. Even though Fiorella had endorsed Bernie, she would oftentimes speak at Tulsi events. I mean,
this all speaks to the fundamental issue that the populist left, for lack of really, I just call it the true left, the people that are concerned with the people. I hate the term populist because it gets attacked.
Yeah,
but then when you
weird.
think about the definition of populism, it's like for the people, what the people want. It doesn't. It's kind of a bit like the way nationalism gets twisted
it gets
around.
lumped in with because now people automatically associate populism with Trump or populism with right wing, which is like weird because populism actually used to be considered a leftist thing, and then like right wing populism is actually new. What people would call populism now, they would have called nationalism 50, 60 years ago. But like populism had actually always been like, because that's what I remember in 2016 when people were trying to figure out how to categorize Bernie people. Most of the time, they would categorize them as populists.
Yeah. So, yeah. And the populist left is fragmented and has a hard time finding a leader, has a hard time uniting under a singular banner. Mostly because I think they're individuals. They're very much of their own mind.
It's because of the same thing that
route.
Makes the left, the marginalized people and the diversity and all the unique qualities they have. the same thing that makes them leftists is actually the exact same reason why they can't band together under one banner.
I also think it's because the other element in the left, the corporatist left, doesn't care about being the front man. They just care about the whole system working. They're actually more of a collectivist in that sense than the fragmented populist left. And so they don't really care.
But that's
Hence,
still like a
Kamala
different
Harris,
fraction,
Joe
a
Biden.
different faction within, right? That's still a different faction. It's the only reason you have that like solid corporatist, if you want to call it establishment of corporatist leftist faction, is because they take all those individualized people who are also seeking validation. They give them pretty titles, they give them a bag, they give them generational wealth or generational security that we've never seen before, and that's what ends up happening. Like they end up like, hey, like Cory, you get your Cory Bookers, you get your Barack Obamas, people who have, especially those who have, let's just call them, they're racially or ethnically or culturally ambiguous because they're mixed, and they were mixed in a very specific situation where they never could fit in, and then the Democratic Party or the corporate party embraced them and gave them money and pretty titles, and now they're deemed as being important, and everybody likes them now. So,
and it's almost impossible, it seems, for an institution to pop up anywhere in politics and not get corrupted and co-opted. Even TYT, as an example, was maybe at one point a true believer, stuck with their initial vision type of organization, but somewhere along the way, they just started becoming kind of an institution unto themselves. They're not fully sold out. They still play 30% outside of the game, but they have been mostly taken over. The Squad would be another example. Like, they don't really move the needle on anything
they're
truly pushing.
They're like approving weapons or they're approving NATO expansion and improving weapons to Ukraine and even more money to Israel. Like, I don't know what the hell happened to them. Well, I know what happened to AOC. AOC's running for president. I've been saying that. Like, they've been prepping her and been grooming her, and like, she's about to run for president. That's one of the reasons she's been playing the game. She was always I think that she was a backup plan to Kamala, or at least supposed to immediately succeed Kamala. But Tulsi kind of threw off the whole. I feel like Tulsi that night, low-key, like ripped the goddamn hole in the space-time continuum and put us in a different timeline. Because when Kamala didn't win, now you get Joe Biden, and Joe Biden's incompetence and stupidity literally has exposed everything. Like, more than Trump actively tried to expose everything, Joe Biden's just sheer incompetence has exposed it even more. Yeah.
Or, incompetence is sometimes being a bit generous, I think. Because I don't know, honestly, like, I suspect quite a bit of ill intent or just disregard for the people out of him, not actual incompetence. Like, he just wants to be told by the people that have kept him where he is and kept him comfy, what to do. And then he's just a player. He's just a system guy, through and through. So if Hillary Clinton is the queen of the establishment, he's the court jester of the establishment.
Oh man, that's crazy. But it's crazy because low key, Joe Biden was one of the ones who started the DLC, which is the Democratic Leadership Council. That was a council that was created to bring the Democratic Party more to the right because they had suffered a series of losses. So like it was, George H.W. Bush beat the hell out of them. Reagan years. There's another one. Nixon. Like they had like a JFK and like a Jimmy Carter, and that was basically it for a while. So they created the DLC to move the entire party to the right. People forget Clinton ran on being more, like he was worse on the war on drugs and the like all that stuff. Like he was like, yeah, I'm gonna be harder on crime than HW is. Like he's not even doing the job right, which is crazy to think. But like, yeah, that's how. But Joe Biden was one of the founders.
Yeah.
So he's been one of the guys. Like the reason that he was made vice president, despite being like he had to quit because he plagiarized, and because people forget he ran for president like 2 other times. He plagiarized, and he just like
him and Kamala are both prime examples of failing upwards, where they choose you because they know that there's no other good reason why you would be promoted.
Yeah,
and so any success you have, they own you.
yeah, they're showing they kind of use Joe Biden and Kamala to show the whoever the power players are, people who want to be power players. Hey, man, look, you can be complete and total morons. You do what we say, we'll make you fucking president. Like we don't care. Like we still make like this is how much power we have. And when you begin to look at just how deep, their clutches grasp, like when you're talking about they've taken over so much of the infrastructure of voting. And like at the end of the day, people don't know, like the reason that third parties don't find success isn't because they're not popular. Like I would actually argue there's a very good chance that there have been elections that third party people have won, but you would never know. Why? Because guess who counts the votes? Whoever the dominant party of the county is, of that precinct. And guess who's going to approve the votes? The AG of the state, who is usually belongs to the party that's currently running the state. So, our system is corrupt to its core. It incentivizes playing for your own team.
Yeah, and we have a weird situation where simultaneously 52% of people-ish, it was different in 2020, but basically 52% of people who can vote don't vote. And so all those votes are basically up for grabs if the security of the voting system is lax enough, such as in California, where I used to live. I registered people to vote in California because I worked in political drives, petitioning, all that kind of stuff. And I literally just knew you didn't have to have the person, you just had to have their driver's license, and then you could get it sent in, or their last four of their social, get it sent in. Then it goes to a place, and then it gets turned in. And like I turned in in 2020, I turned in mine and my girlfriend's ballots. And so I knew, they didn't ask me for me and my mom's. My girlfriend showed up and voted in person, and like went in and did it there in the moment. But they didn't ask me for ID, so I brought multiple ballots. I showed up there. No one keeps track of where it gets shipped to, and no one keeps track of how you submit the information in the first place.
And then we tried to find this, like the combo couch. They literally hunted, like, yo, where's the chain of custody for these ballots? Everybody, we don't know.
They just show up and we count them. Yep. And worse than all this, and this is where the system that's been working for decades and decades and probably hundreds of years, honestly, to keep people divided, jumps into action. So the right will talk about voter security, and the left will talk about voter suppression.
They call it voter fraud, and then the left talks about voter suppression. But
everyone. So I talked about everyone agreeing on everything. Everyone believes in voter security, and everyone believes you should have the ability to vote. Like you should not be prevented from voting. You should have enough, voting booths and everything in enough counties. So there's no division in the actual population, but they get us on different tracks of conversation, and then we're just stuck arguing, even though we all agree. Yeah, that's the game.
They control the parameters of the conversation, and unfortunately, is the leading voices in both clubs, if you will, both teams. It's they didn't feed into the wrong and oftentimes harmful rhetoric because that's what gets the clicks, right? So Trump will scream out, "Voter fraud is rampant." That's a lie. Voter fraud almost never happens. To be real with y'all, bro, literally no one cares enough. No one. Except for people who are directly involved in the parties. But when the parties get involved, or if a politician gets involved in any way, it is no longer voter fraud, it is election fraud. And there is voter suppression. Like I don't like when Republicans do this shit where they're like, oh, remember, it's racist to have ID, it's racist to have ID. Like, no. Voter suppression is real. There was like a whole situation in Alabama where they like changed the type of ID you had to have in 2016 to vote. And then they shut down all the DMVs within like a 15-mile radius in black towns. So like voter suppression is also real. But also like for the leftists who, so Venezuela actually has one of the most secure election systems in the world. Like not only do you have to have an ID, but they have a fucking fingerprint scanner. Bitch, you are not going to vote twice in Venezuela. That's a good thing. We want that. Yeah. But the problem, and this is what I try to do on my show basically, is where people get these conversations wrong is usually the nuance of the rhetoric. I know people don't like, oh, why do we have labels? And why do we there's a wrong time to apply a label. If you're applying a label to shut down a conversation, if you're applying a label to remove the nuance from any discourse, then you shouldn't be using labels. That's wrong. if you're trying to codify or help people understand what they previously didn't understand, and like maybe this is the language that you need to use it, and that's fine because it's important. Language is important. Words do have value. Like the conversation I love having with people. So I'm actually not a communist. I'm not a socialist. I believe in mixed economies because every single country has very different circumstances, and the diversity of circumstances probably to determine like what economy you should be using. Like that just is common sense. However, I do not like when you have fucking conservatives calling Joe Biden a communist. That is idiotic. That there's nothing that, and then they'll be like, oh man, like, so this whole Brittany Griner situation, right? People are like, oh man, she loves communism until she goes to a communist country. And I'm like, hold up, bro, our laws are more strict than Russia's laws on marijuana, federally speaking. You can't smuggle, like, I'm sorry, bro. At the end of the day, you can't smuggle drugs. Like, I feel like the morality of the situation is strict. Of course, it's up for debate. They shouldn't have the laws. It's dumb. Yeah. But at the same time, you can't smuggle drugs in the countries. We, like, every fucking pothead knows this. Like, don't do it. It's stupid. You're going to get in trouble. And unfortunately, now she's in the middle of a political game, which is a whole different, layer. But they're calling Russia a communist country, not realizing that every characteristic that they believe communism has, right? They associate communism with what they think is Soviet Russia. But in actuality, they're like, oh man, could you imagine if the government worked for the wealthy and they extracted money from the middle class and the poor people and only gave it to the rich people? Like, what kind of communist shithole would that be like? I don't know, like the fuck United States of America? I don't know, potentially. Well, no, this is capitalism. It just isn't being done right. When has it been done right? Because there have been robber barons, there have been monopolies. There like J.P. Morgan and his family have been running the country alongside the Rockefellers and all this. I'm like, dog, when has it been done right? Please explain this to me. Capitalism is supposed to eliminate competition. So like these words, like that's so. And once again, it's probably why I confuse the shit out of people, and everybody's kind of like they're weird about watching me because people like kind of being able to put you in the category in the box, right? I'm not one of these leftists that actually believes that China is altruistic, nor do I believe they're good for like African countries or Caribbean countries. Nor do I believe they're communists. Like, you cannot have, by definition, you cannot have one party and be communist. You can't do it. And if the people do not own the means of production in China, their oligarchs do. Why? Because they have one party and it's fucking easy to pay off one party. Yeah. Otherwise, why would you have rampant deregulation to appease capitalist countries and allow them to legitimize and lower the wages of their workers if you're a communist? Yeah. And also, why would those countries, the capitalist NATO countries, work to make a quote-unquote communist country at this point maybe the strongest economy in the world, at one point second or third strongest economy in the world, and at the same time make sure every other legitimately communist country gets stamped out at its root? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, basically we're sort of getting shot from both sides with the communist and the fascist rhetoric, fear-mongering about communists and fear-mongering about fascists. Mostly because on the communist side, they want to try to point away from corporatist establishment language, and they want to make people ideologically as communists and just call it. Yeah, and it makes a bunch of right-wingers sound stupid to the people that are informed in the center left or in the educated left. And then on the other side, like if we talk about the definition of fascism, so we're talking about China and us, we're fascist actually. The technical definition is private ownership, public control. But no one would ever want to break it out like that. No one wants to break it down that way because that's like standard American policy. And so if you want to actually get down to it, we're the fascist ones, and it's not because of Trump. It's actually because of the system that's been in place since World War II, coincidentally enough.
Bro, remember whenever Trump was investigating or demanding Hillary Clinton be investigated when he was president, right? Oh, that's a witch hunt. What is this, a banana republic? Da, 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 da. In fact, I said, hey, first of all, one of my biggest gripes with Trump, I'm pissed that he didn't go fucking hard to get that bitch put in jail. That's what the fuck I be mad about. Like, nah, that bitch tried to cheat you. She calling everybody Russian assets. She tried to cheat the election. I was the one having to take most of the fucking brunt. Bro, I got shitted on because everybody thought I was bullshitting about her cheating. Like, I got shitted on by leftists because they still wanted to believe in the system. And like, Trump did not go hard enough. But now, fast forward, Joe Biden's president. Fucking FBI running up into a former president's crib, bro.
Yep.
Not running up into Hillary Clinton's crib, though.
No.
Epstein fingerprints everywhere, goddamn. Like, everywhere. Not running up into her house, running up into Trump's house. And
for some paperwork.
Yeah, for some paperwork. Yeah. No, they're trying to link him. Like, it literally, I think, is directly connected to the raids that happened with the black activists a couple of weeks ago. It's Russiagate bullshit. They use the same strategies and the same tactics over and over again. And what I want people, and I'm actually going to be covering this tomorrow most likely, what I want people to take away from this is last week I reported on the black activists in leadership that were being quote unquote linked without indictment to Russian collusion to try to overthrow or interfere with the election in 2016. Fast forward 2 weeks later, the FBI is now on Trump's doorstep doing the same exact thing. They won't say what it is because they know if people hear Russian collusion again, they're gonna be like, that's bullshit. But it's probably going to be that. The real issue is Joe Biden's a shit candidate. Like, he is. Kamala it might be even shittier somehow.
No, for sure. For sure she is.
But so now everybody said back in the day, like, you know what Joe Biden's going to ensure? It's a Trump re-election. That's what the fuck is going to happen.
Yeah.
And now
this is only making it worse. This is going to make him a martyr.
And black people, they fucking love Trump now, and they're unapologetic about yelling about, bro, they're like, hey, man, I don't like everything you say, but shit, my life won't like this under Trump. Like, if you go, I'll tell you the number one way to measure how black people feel about any given candidate, go to any hip hop page on Instagram and go to the comment section. That's how black people feel. Don't fucking watch BET. Don't fucking watch SNL. Like, don't listen to these quote unquote, some of these like black, like Don Lemon and shit like that. Fuck them. They don't know what the fuck going on in the black community. Go to goddamn Hoodville. Go to City Boys page. Go to like Hot New Hip Hop. Go to all that shit. That's how people, and the people literally be in the comments. They're like, yo, man, I kind of miss Trump, dog. Like, this Joe Biden shit ain't for us. Like, and because now the black people can't be deceived again, because now we're in this era of enlightenment and information. You fucked up. You better extract every bit you can from that fuck up, because you're not going to be able to repeat it again. You tried Hillary, then try to run the same damn campaign with Kamala, obliterated. Okay? You fast forward, you try to, black people unite, black. That shit is dead, because the celebrities see what Joe Biden did with all that energy they gathered for him. They have been made fools of too. People forget about that. They got made fools of. The people who backed him got made fools of. People said, look, guys, this can't be any worse than Trump. That was the fucking campaign slogan. It got way worse than Trump. So now all these people are more susceptible to either not vote at all or vote for Trump. So who you start going after? The black people, black leaders, and Trump himself and anybody associated with him. So that now if he runs for president, because now, technically speaking, you can be a felon and run for president, which is weird. You can't vote for yourself, but you can run.
That's weird.
I know. Weird. You can't vote for yourself, but you can run, unless you're in Florida. Which, by the way, Trump does live in. So, but in all seriousness, if they're going after these, if Trump runs, now what are they going to say? But this house is raided by the FBI. Yeah, but this house is raided, but he's getting under investigation. Like, because they saw that worked against him.
And he'll just be like, oh, you mean like Hillary Clinton was? Like, he could just turn it right back on them really easily. They don't, you know, it's ironic with all the Hitlerian comparisons between him and them. A lot of people don't remember, and this, now, to be fair, I'm not a historian, so if I'm wrong, please correct me. Hitler was put in jail because of his brazen and crazy actions before he ended up running and winning and doing all that. The more the system comes down on someone like this in unfair, heavy-handed ways, and there's no way you can argue that it wasn't heavy-handed. You could say whatever you want about the facts on the ground, but having a bunch of FBI agents, you know, dozens of them from the video that's been shown, show up and just search the whole thing and go through it the way they did, that's you
Without
can't
even
argue it's
letting
not
the
heavy-handed.
public, they didn't even give him a chance to, like, I mean, if our system's supposed to actually be legitimate, and if we show as much honor to this office as we, like, this is their former fucking boss. The FBI falls under the executive branch. They didn't even give this man an opportunity to say, hey, come and search my spot. I'm just letting everybody know, you know, we just want to make sure that, I want to let everybody know that I am under investigation. The FBI is working with me to ensure that I get due process, that it's fair. You know, they're just doing their job. No hard feelings towards them. You can come to my house and search it. They didn't even give him the opportunity to do that. They tried to catch him off guard, which is fucking weird. Wait, like, what do they think they want to find? They're like, oh, we can't tell y'all. Because y'all didn't find shit. Y'all found Trump shit. Oh, I didn't pay taxes. And, bitch, I don't even believe in taxes. I think federal income tax is a fucking crime against humanity. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But, like, especially as a leftist, like, bro, what do my taxes go to? War, pockets of politicians, pensions of politicians, war. I'm a fucking leftist. I want my money to not go to that stuff. So why would I say, pay your fair share? Your fair share is keep your goddamn money. If you can tax me through sales, you can tax me through, like, luxury goods and things like that. But, like, what my labor gets me back, there should be no middleman for that shit. My labor should not have middleman. Period, point blank. So, like, I don't even care about that shit. I've been saying it. I'm like, yo, if Trump found a way to screw the system, and I don't care shit.
We'll put our nerd hats on for a second real quick. And I just want to address that because although I think functionally and from a fairness standpoint, a consumer or some kind of luxury goods tax, that's an interesting way to go about it. But the problem is laborers and consumers are basically the same people. And so even if you have a consumption tax, it's still people. Like, if you want to buy that car, it's now 20% more out of your reach or 10% more out of your reach with that tax.
Potentially. I think that we have so many people, though, like our economy, at least at one point, our economy was so diverse that it wouldn't be like the VAT tax overseas because, like, those countries are smaller and they have a far less diversified economy. And a lot of their goods are imported, or the services were being imported, where a lot of ours were internal. So our agriculture basically comes from inside our country. Even the oil that we have, like, that's all from in-house. So we have the advantage that we have when it comes to that type of stuff, like taxing or healthcare. Like, we have the ability to import health, like doctors. We can get free MDs as long as you spend a minimum 10 to 15 years here and open up your own practice. We'll even give you a fucking grand to open up your practice. Like, we have every single advantage that countries beg to have, and we purposely don't take advantage of it. But go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. And I do agree with you that the consumption or some sort of a version of a VAT tax or anything, it would look different here, absolutely. But part of the issue is we're taxing income and not wealth, and that's sort of a background issue. And so my opinion is we should replace the whole thing with an asset tax, because assets are by definition that which attracts money to you anyways. And a 3% per year annual asset tax would pay for everything. And then you don't need to have an income tax. You don't need to have a consumption tax.
And it would incentivize homeowners to keep their prices. Like, the real estate market would have a more stable, like, price floor and ceiling. Because, like, right now,
the incentives would be reversed for having overly inflated real estate prices.
Exactly. Right now, overly inflated real estate prices can, if you have enough money and have the right accountant, you can almost get credits. And then the consumer market would be way more robust because we have all that extra money in our bank account to spend on what we want. And the ability to accumulate wealth and assets would be greatly improved because of all that additional capital you'll have for savings, and you won't be charged when you consume things. So and what's interesting, total side note here, that's the official economic prescription from the Muslim system, is a 2.5% annual asset tax at the end of the year. Yeah, I didn't realize that till after I had the idea totally uniquely on a different track. But once I was told that, I was like, they're onto some stuff there. For real, that's actually a really good idea. I do have to get up out of here though, man.
Okay.
But it was
I appreciate you coming on so much, man. It's been wonderful. I'm really, really great. I'm really, really grateful that you gave such an in-depth breakdown of what you did. and your career so far. It definitely showed that you've been there and done that with a lot of the stuff. And I would love to have another
I've definitely
conversation
done
in
it,
the
man.
future.
I'm exhausted. I'm telling you, bro. Last couple of years it's been rough trying to like. I didn't realize how much. I mean, I was working 12 hours a day, sometimes longer. Putting out. You talking about putting out videos and going to these events, and one trying to live my life. It's a
Yeah,
lot, man. You know, and shout out to everybody who's kind of like stepped into the independent media role. We need more people in independent media and whatever medium you choose to do that, because like most people are like you, most people are like me. It's just that most people don't know that most people are like you and are like me, because we're
yeah.
not going to be the ones necessarily to generate hundreds of thousands of views. Now, prior to
We
suppression
don't
and
have
censorship,
infrastructure.
yeah, prior to suppression and like and things like that and censorship, I had a guy from YouTube find me at a Tulsi event in California to tell me that YouTube was going to flip the entire algorithm specifically because of me, like, which was insane at the time. I was like, get the fuck out of here, bro. He's like, no, like, you're getting way too popular off of one, telling the truth about Kamala, but two, just telling the truth in general, and you just happen to be Tulsi surrogate, and you happen to be black. He's like, you're getting too popular too quick, bro. And he's like, they're gonna flip the algorithm. And lo and behold, 3 weeks later, it was never the same again. And they did it on purpose. But that's because that message resonates. Believe it or not, the
Yeah.
truth is much more popular than what people would think it is. And if you can be one of those people out there that manages to understand the nuance, like figure out what this person's truth is, figure out what this person's truth is, figure out what they're actually trying to say, and translate that for them, then you will have, that's a sweet spot. And you will always have a place in independent media, and you will always have something to talk about, because people need help understanding each other 24/7. So there's always going to be a job there.
Well, that's good to know. Lots of job demand, job security for me. That's great.
There you go, man.
But yeah, and honestly, it's in my opinion, it's the most lucrative avenue to take because it's the least competitive. No one wants to be
Being
there.
honest is the least
Everyone
competitive.
wants
You're
to
right.
be in their
Fucking right.
little tribe and sit in the middle and be very comfy.
That's very true, man. That's how Kim Iverson got so popular, man. That's how Jimmy Dore even got, you know, a lot of those type of people, they were unpopular until people were like, oh shit, they were actually right. Damn.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go ahead and take a look at everything now. So like,
Yeah.
and it's a harder route. It's a harder role, you know, at first. You have less room for error, admittedly. I mean, I love the challenge, and honestly, like I said, bro, you get to wake up every day with your conscience clear, which is not, I can tell you 95% of anybody in politics, whether it be who are actively involved running for office or who are in media, like they don't get to wake up with their conscience clear. They have to sleep and live with that every day. Whereas you get to wake up and be like, hey man, time to go tell the truth again today. Fuck both
A bottle
sides.
to go to sleep and a line of coke to get up in the morning.
There you go. I do live in Miami, man, you know.
All right.
Take it easy.
You have a great
man.
one, boss.
You too.
Have a good day. Hello, people. Any questions or comments? I just opened up the comment section. You guys got anything for me before I hop off? That was good. That was good. He was better than I expected. That was quite cool. And I have a lot to go back on and take notes on and do research on. So, all right. You guys have a good one. God bless.